Hello everyone, and welcome to another Factorio Friday Facts number 381, Space Platforms. Finally, we are here talking about this. We had some teasers and brief discussion of it in the initial Friday Facts where they released info about the expansion, but now we get down into details of it, and it's really interesting. I actually have quite a few questions that are brought up with this, but overall it seems really cool. So I hope you're as excited as I am. This is going to be super fun to go through. This is a pretty long one, but I do have a summary that I'm going to kind of use for some of the stuff. And then just a heads up, I may zoom in and out a bit, like not too much, but some of these images, it's better to look at them more zoomed out. So just a heads up, the screen may be moving in and out a little bit here and there. So what are space platforms? So basically, space platforms are flying factories that serve as transportation between planets for both items and players. And then they basically just go into the birth of the platform. So you essentially start by launching an item called a space platform starter pack into space. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of this name. I mean, that's just like a little nitpick, but that may be placeholder. I don't know. The item is inserted into rocket silo in a similar way to satellite, right? And you can see the icon here, which is, I think this graphic is also a placeholder. They go into that a little lower down as well. So you insert that into the rocket silo, and then, they kind of just explain what I said there. And then the space platform hub. So basically the primary structure on an initial space platform is the space platform hub, which is this thing here, a central entity that stores items for construction and logistics. And this is a placeholder. It doesn't quite match everything else, so they are working on making this actually a final graphic. But yeah, so this is basically just like what you would initially start with when you launch this starter kit item into space. And then they say it's a one per platform central entity which stores items for both construction and logistics, has logistic requests, and a train-like schedule where planets act as stops. So this is pretty key. This is really nice. So it's not some like haphazard flying in a general direction towards a planet, like hoping for the best. Basically, you would, if you're trying to just specifically go to a planet, it's just like you choose the planet, and then, it'd be like a nav system or something, and then it will just go there like a train schedule. Obviously, it's going to take time and such, and there's obstacles along the way, which we get into, but, it's fairly straightforward with how you would get there. And then so you have this, which also I do want to say that the space platform actually up close looks super cool in my opinion. It is like a little busy and stuff in terms of everything on it, but that is intentional, and I think that fits. And some of this will be explained as well. Well, maybe not specifically why this is, but you can kind of infer why it may be so messy as we get further down here. So they say here, and then they do confirm that's a placeholder. The inventory of the space platform hub is limited, but these cargo bays essentially can be added onto it. And you can see here. So these are still, I think they're not quite finished. They're not complete placeholders, but I think they're just in progress. But you can see how they do latch like onto this once you place them. So then this can just basically expand upon it to increase its capacity, which you will need. And then I like this little note here. Jaroslaw's sanity is now somewhere deep in these pixels. If you find it, please send it back. Yeah, I cannot imagine the graphical work required for doing all this, but overall, looking really good. Like even this placeholder graphic looks not bad at all, but you can tell it doesn't quite fit. So I'm glad that they are, making a final version. So basically, we get into how do you get to the space platforms, and this is like where the real meat of this Friday Facts is. So essentially, rockets are used to transport items to space platforms. The challenge lies in delivering items into space, essentially, and then some challenge, of course, building things on the platform too. But you do it with a rocket silo, right? So it was clear and unchanged. Rockets are used to bring items to platforms, which we went into, but then the rest went through an evolution. So their original plan essentially was that it would be part of a logistic challenge to transport items and insert all the required items directly into a rocket silo. Everything in the silo would be available to the orbital logistics system, which pulls required items from rocket silos. But they did run into a problem here, and that was basically the actual gameplay was not very good, and it got annoying very quickly. So excuse me, the reason for that is that you just need so many different items that, and in small quantities, that it just kind of became a mess and like a cluster, because you you had to like filter stuff in the rocket silo, and like limit quantities and have all these different items, like in chests inserting into here, and all that, and they go into that here. Also, we could probably do some deciphering of new items. I don't see a ton. I only see like this, which looks like probably just the cargo bay things we looked at. This is something we'll go into later. This is space platform parts, and these look like engines to me. And then interesting inserter graphic here, but anyway. And then they say, yeah, configuring this wasn't fun. On top of all that, the items had to be backed up and or backed up in silo and the chest. Sorry, can't read. So they needed a way out. So they made 3 semi-separated features, or added 3 semi-separated features to fix this pain. And this is actually really good stuff in here, because I don't think this just, I mean, this may only apply to doing stuff with the space platform, but overall these just seem like really good changes. So the first one is that rocket silos are now directly connected to the logistics network. So they basically just act as a requester chest. You can just request items directly to it, basically like as your player requester slots work, which is super nice, I think. And then the rocket silo can be configured with a checkbox to automatically request things needed by the platform above from the logistic network. Now, this is only activated when the items are already present in the network in the needed quantities. This is also nice, so it's almost kind of a set and forget thing. Like, obviously, like it says, you do need the items in the network for this to activate, to work, but it's just like whatever's required on the space platform that's being requested from up there will just automatically be requested to the silo if you have those materials, which is really nice. And then kind of tying onto that, when you're placing ghosts on the space platform can be set to automatically request these items from the surface of the local planet. So again, that's kind of what we said, but yeah, so like when you go to place stuff in there and it needs the items for it, it'll just automatically send that request to the silo. Then they just go into, with the 3 things combined, you can just build ghosts on platform and everything is done automatically, assuming you have the items. So like I said, it's kind of a set and forget, which is really nice. You just build what you need with the ghosts on the platform, and then you just, let it work, as long as you have the materials or providing the materials in your main network. And then they say the important part is that you can still ignore the logistic network and stockpile the silos manually, which can be very practical in space special situations, or basically required in some of the yet undisclosed space age content, but it is an exception. So this is really interesting to me, that at some point there comes a stage where it's basically required to manually stockpile or to manually supply the silos. I'm really interested how that's going to work and what it is. I can't imagine that's too big of a part of it, since that kind of goes against what Factorio is. But I'll just be really interested in how they're doing that. So, excuse me, now we go into Asteroid. All right, so asteroids as a resource. Essentially, space platforms encounter asteroids, which serve as a resource and are also hazardous. So you have these smaller ones here, which are just purely a resource. They won't damage the platform if they hit it, and they can be basically grabbed by these extended grabbers here, which we did see in a previous Friday Facts, and then processed into materials, which is super nice. So there are, they kind of go into it. There are metallic asteroids for iron ore used to produce gun turret ammunition and thruster oxidizer, or carbonic asteroids for carbon, which is a new resource used on the platform to produce thruster fuel. Oxide asteroids for ice, which is melted into water, then used to produce thruster fuel and oxidizer, or you could just use the water itself. A new machine called a crusher is used to process asteroids. Later on, more resource types can be obtained from asteroids using advanced crushing recipes, which is pretty interesting. And I'm just fascinated. I could just watch this for a while. I really love how they did these extended grabby arms. This is just, oh man, it's just like right there, like where it just grabs multiple of them and they're like flying all over the place. Man, this is just so satisfying to me. I really can't wait to have this. I can just, like, imagine if you just lined all these up and you just had, like 30 of these in a row. It'd get pretty ridiculous, but You can see here that these are now going into crushers, which is what we looked at in one of those chests by the silo earlier that I said we'd go into later. So they're using filter inserters, right? Because this doesn't have a filter, I assume. So it's just grabbing whatever. And then the filter inserters take it out, put in the crusher, and then you get your stuff out. You get iron ore, you get this, and then this stuff. One of them was, I forget exactly what all of them were. Well, this is ice directly, and this is probably thruster oxide or something. Also, this obviously has some sort of inventory in it because it's grabbing like all different things, and then and then these guys are having to take it out from that. So I would assume this has some sort of small buffer within it. I feel like it kind of has to work that way. It'll be interesting to see how big that is. It can happen that the platform collects too many asteroids, or some recipe byproducts just accumulate too much. And then one simple feature we love is you can literally just dump stuff overboard, which I love this so much. You can, like, any junk you want, you don't even have to put it in boxes and like shoot it like you do now. You can literally just throw it overboard the platform and just into space, which, I mean, obviously in real life, space trash is a problem. In Factorio, though, we don't have to worry about that. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we do. That would be interesting or annoying. But either way, it's just super cool. I mean, heck, I might just shoot my wood up here in rocket silos from the main planet just to dump it overboard. Just to be, super passive aggressive about it with the wood, because you know how you just accumulate so much wood from chopping down all the trees and stuff. But overall, this is just a really cool feature. I really like this a lot. And it's just fun. In the past, we've had multiple versions of ways how to trash items from platforms, including having a special storage entity which was able to do it. It all got so complicated in the end, they decided just, simple, throw it over the edge, which I like. Now, this is really interesting that we get into here, folks, is the space science in space. And this, I know last time I kind of broke the fourth wall. I was like, hey, if you're not paying attention, pay attention to this. This is probably another moment like that, because this is... I'm sure they'll go into this more as we go on, but this is just really interesting to me, this whole space science section. So they basically go into, what if we produce space science packs on the space platform instead of just by sending satellites into space? Sounds cool on first sight because it fleshes out the space science pack into something more than just like the imaginary, we sent satellite up and they sent research data from space and we turned it into science packs, right? It just makes a little more sense than that. But they've made some pretty significant changes here, actually. So their initial version of space platforms, you would unlock all their components immediately after rocket silo. With that, you could go explore planets. This sounds great until you realize the player isn't quite getting anything useful out of any of this until they have successfully brought science packs back from another planet. So this basically meant, like in this initial version of this they had, that you had to make the rocket silo and mini rockets, build the platforms, travel to other planets, solve the challenges of the planet and automate science pack, and automate the science packs and rocket production there. And it's quite a lot of steps to do, and it reminds us of, they say it reminds them of a similar pacing problem where they had to redo the oil, basically, the oil processing. I believe this is maybe where they changed it from where your initial oil, like basic oil processing, just gives you petroleum and not the other two products. Pretty sure that's what this is referencing. So we tried to break this into smaller, manageable subparts, which yield some usefulness reward on their own. This is helped by effectively having 2 tiers of space science packs. So this is where we get into what's really interesting. So there's 2 tiers now. So the initial tier, so satellites are launched into space, are still used to obtain the first space science packs, but you only get 10 space science packs for satellite. And then you can spin these on a few technologies which cost in the range of 10 to 30 space science packs. Namely, this is where you can unlock tier 2 modules, covert enrichment process, space platforms, asteroid collectors, and a new space science recipe. So you can kind of see here. Also, I see kind of the tech tree visuals have changed a bit, but so you unlock space science pack, right? And then every time you launch a satellite, you get 10 of these. And then you can unlock these other things, which are use this science pack, but are fairly cheap, right? Space platform, asteroid collection, space science pack in space. Bit of a mouthful there, but you unlock that, and then lastly, space platform thruster, which I would assume you would. Yeah, so you've already okay. So at this point, you can already build your space platform because you've unlocked these things, and then you would want to make your space science in space, which we'll go into, and then you can use that to then make thrusters so you can actually move your space platform. At this point, the platform is just kind of orbiting the planet, and it's just like stationary in a way. So they say the next step is to construct a basic platform, basically what I went into. And it says it can combine crush asteroids with imported uranium from Navis to produce science packs in much higher quantities. So this is what is really interesting to me. So we're now using uranium in space science packs. So I'm just like I'm a little stumped here because I will go into this, and then I'll go into what I'm a bit confused with. So, with one rocket load of enriched uranium, you can produce 1,000 space science packs in space, which makes it 100 times more efficient than sending satellites in space. This is effectively splitting the space science technologies into two distinct tiers. Right, so you can see that we are taking this and processing it in crushers, and then sending in uranium. Oh, I see. Okay, so they're pulling it and then maybe taking extra out or something, setting up the enriched uranium. So this is another good use for enriched uranium, at least. And then we're making the space science packs. And again, you basically, like they said, you can do what with one rocket load of enriched uranium, you can produce 1,000 space science packs. Now that is still quite a lot of enriched uranium. Like you'll probably need quite a large processing facility for your uranium at this point. And they say platforms producing space science and putting it into space platforms. They just kind of explain that. Past this point, technologies return back to costing hundreds/thousands of research points each. Normal infinite technologies become affordable, so you can finally get more robot speed upgrades, weapon damage upgrades, or unlock atomic bomb. This progression is also very useful. So player first gets to grasp the basic asteroid processing in a safe environment before they need to build a platform which dares to travel away from Novice. Okay, so this is really cool, but this is more of just a question for me because they don't go into this, not necessarily like a problem, is what happens to all like what happens to like rocket control units and low density structures and rocket fuel at this point? I would assume, I would hope that they have it used for other things, because like it sounds like you maybe still use it to make these, but you really would only want to be launching satellites or space science for like however much this is, like 60 science or so. And then at that point, you would just want to be doing this, right? Because you don't want to be researching like a robot speed that takes 10,000 science packs when you're only getting 10 per satellite. So it would make much more sense to then process it on here. But my understanding from what they show here is really all you're doing is taking the asteroid parts and uranium and making space science. So then what happens to like I'm just curious, like what the use then will be for what is currently used for space science, the rocket control units, low density structures, and rocket fuel. I mean, I'm sure they thought of that. Like, I'm not saying they didn't. I'm just really curious now, what is that stuff going to be used for? Because it clearly is not really used for space science in any quantity at this point. So I don't know. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that too, as well. Or maybe, I mean, I don't think they didn't mention this at all. So I don't know. I'd just be curious what you all think might be the case there. So then we get into moving space platforms, which is also super cool. Of course, I mean, this whole thing is cool. All of these space platform stuff is really neat. So the platforms can either be stationary in orbit or in motion between orbits. And as you would probably guess, thrusters are used for movement. Platforms must be equipped with defensive turrets to protect against large damaging asteroids. So asteroids can be damaging, essentially, and I think they go into that lower down here. So they basically say that in order to move, the thruster needs to be supplied with fuel and oxidizer, which can be obtained from asteroid resources. So we see here, we have some stuff coming in. I'm sure there's a grabber over here. And, oh, well, that's for that. But this is undergrounding, I would assume, underneath this. Comes in. So we're taking ice, basically, from a grabber up there. And it's turning into water, right? Which is then being used for the stuff for the thruster and sent back in. We kind of saw this type of setup for this, again, in a previous Friday Facts. And then you can see the one thruster, which again, just like, I mean, I just love this so much. This whole, so far out of everything they've shown for the expansion, I think this is actually my favorite graphical thing. Not that anything else is bad, but this is just so perfect to Factorio for me. I just like, you can even see like the like crankshaft or something in here. I don't know, or fuel processing. Like this is just so cool. I love this so much. And they say this isn't without risk though. So asteroids can be a threat. So there's these larger asteroids here, which you can see, which will hit the platform, and if enough of they'll damage it, and eventually, like if you have no protection against it, oh, this looks really good by the way. And then if they damage it enough, it will destroy your platform. So you have to have turrets to protect it. So the turrets will shoot it and break it into smaller chunks eventually till it gets to the point where it's just the size that the grabbers will grab it, and then it's no longer a threat at that point. And it looks like, okay, so they are grabbing it. I don't know. So they're missing some of it. Some of it will float by, but overall, you can just turn basically a threat into resources, if you have enough turrets to protect against it. Which is interesting. I like there's like a bit of a threat up there. Building rules. So this is also really interesting, and I saw a lot of people had questions in regards to this whole building thing in the forum posts. So everything on the space platform is done via the remote view. No coincidence that we looked at that last time. Some entities can't be constructed on platforms at all. So a few of these would be like robots. So platforms remain a belt logistic challenge, which is interesting. Kind of makes sense, I suppose. Chests prevent excessive buffering. Vehicles, including trains, spidertrons for various reasons, burn entities for a bit of realism, as there's no atmosphere in space. Fair enough. Space platforms cannot have holes in tiles, and their surface must be basically continuous. If a tile that bridges two sections is destroyed, the section without connection to the hub is destroyed as well. So they show an example here. You can't, so this is like this, but you can't just like bridge it over and then just leave a gap here. You can see it's like kind of starting to yell at you. So you have to like basically just have it be a continuous thing here. Right? Power is automatically distributed by space platform tiles, so you don't need to build electric poles. So what I went into before, this is part of why these platforms maybe look a little messy, because they actually distribute power. So like you can see maybe these are some power lines or something going through here, which again I think is super nice, not having to place power poles all over the place, and it does allow for more compact building as well. And then they do say that essentially the platform primarily gets its power from solar panels. They are more effective in space than they are on the planet, which is, cool. And then also, they do say, though, that, in some cases you may actually be at a point in space, in the space travel, where you're farther away from the star. So at that point, they'd actually be less effective. However, you can build nuclear up here. So if you want to build nuclear on your space platform, that sounds totally safe. Then you can do that. Obviously, it may not be a huge setup, but again, the platform is not going to be like the size of an entire factory on your planet, so you certainly don't need, just a massive amount of nuclear power. But it is indicated that you can build these quite large. So they say the nuclear power, though, it does require significant amounts of water ice to be gathered from asteroids, which you would obviously imagine. So you need a pretty decent process for that. And then we go down here, and they go into quality, basically, and basically how quality is going to be super important for the space platform. It's not going to be required, but it's just going to be really helpful. So I know this might be kind of controversial, because some people may just not want to play with this at all, and it's still totally viable to play without it. But it will be super helpful for those that do want to play it, because, they just give some examples, like you can have a chemical plant that produces fuel faster while consuming the same amount of power, higher quality solar panels that produce more, higher quality asteroid collectors, which have more arms, which is actually really interesting, higher quality furnaces and assembly machines, higher quality gun turrets, and, higher quality ammo. Basically, it's going to be really important to get the most out of your platform. Long story short, if you have higher quality items, it might make a lot less sense to use them on the platform if you have a few higher quality items. Yeah. So this is an example. Like, it can get pretty big, and this is some serious engine power. I love this. Just the flames and like the just disgusting. This reminds me of, I don't know how many of you know the term like rolling coal, where like these like diesel trucks in real life, will just like put up these massive, disgusting exhaust clouds. This reminds me of that. Like in real life, not so great. In Factorio, I love it because you can just tell this is like barely functioning and like super dirty, and you can just tell that by this exhaust. Like this just looks so gross and polluted, and I think that just fits the theme perfectly. And then you can just see they're just dumping so much stuff off the side. This is just hilarious. So they basically go into the process. Essentially, the platforms achieve accurately what Corex's initial idea was. However, they have spent a lot of time finding the right path to get there. The rocket logistics and space platform mechanics were changed very significantly, and they weren't afraid to rework systems related to platform in order to make the experience of building them as good as we can imagine. And they say, apart from the technical mechanics, they created interesting recipes, which don't get too complicated. And, they had a rough idea to begin with, what they want to achieve, somehow craft ammo and something for thrusters. And Arendelle has laid out a creative set of recipes. Since then, V has done a lot of balancing passes and tweaks. As you probably already used to by now, the graphics you can see in this post have taken a lot of effort. I can't imagine how long it took them to get all this right. So, huge props to them for that. And then they say from the first service of the space platform tiles and decoratives done by Lucas, space platform transitions. Basically, the entire GFX team was involved in this, which I can totally see why, because there's just so many details on the space platform. The conclusion. It is an undeniable fact that the factory must grow always, but sometimes it just transcends to the point where it seems like nothing matters anymore, and all the challenges have been trivialized, and basically there's just no like real goal in mind at that point. Survival, space constraints, items feeling like the way they have any value, and so on. However, with the rules of how space platforms are built, they can enjoy these feelings of puzzles to be solved for quite a bit further. They say, well, building a platform can be easy by sending more platform tiles into space and giving yourself more room to build. It's always motivating to try to keep the platform compact so it can fly as fast as possible. Which is true. So there is a weight assigned to this. They did go into this. I thought I read that, but I guess I missed it. But there is a weight assigned. So like the bigger it is, the more thrust obviously you need to move it. So if you want to get to planets faster, you would be keeping it small. Or if you just want a mass production facility up here, you can totally do that as well, which I really like. And then they say space platforms can specialize in different tasks, so it can be motivating to optimize them for different goals. You can aim to make a huge platform that can load thousands of items, or a small platform with capacity sacrifice or speed. Would you like a minimal platform so you can get to the first planet as soon as possible, or do you perhaps want a fancy, gigantic platform that can craft its own components mid-flight? And again, this is going to be something that you have to weigh and figure out as you play, which I really like. And then lastly, they just go in again to kind of compare like space age space platforms to space exploration platforms and spaceships. And the main consensus here is that due to modding constraints, space exploration just couldn't do this as well. Right, so like in space exploration, there's not an option to have the platforms act as like use train schedules, whereas like now in the base game, or well in this expansion, since the devs did it, they can do basically whatever they want. So now we can have these traverse between planets like a train would traverse between train stops, which is so much simpler than just heading in a general direction of the planet and like hoping for the best. I know that may not be how it works now in space exploration, but generally the devs are just allowed so much more freedoms on what they can do and tweaks they can make, where it just makes the whole process smoother and less tedious. And then they do say somewhere in here, they do say, I want to see ghosts. So basically the questions that came up here in the forum posts was that there's an impression being given that you only build with ghosts, but there's no robots. So is stuff just being like, because you obviously only build in ghosts because you're doing it in the remote view, but there's no robots. So does stuff just like miraculously get built? I mean, that kind of sounds like it, which is fine, I guess. It seems like kind of takes out of the immersion a little bit, that it just like magically appears built there once the item is sent up. But I can see why they wouldn't want robots probably in space. So, you know, I mean, I guess maybe because if you ghost it and then you send the materials up, it sounds like they didn't really give an impression that the player, would need to be going back and forth constantly. So it kind of sounds like if the stuff is ghosted and you send the materials up in the silo, that the stuff will just be built automatically. Which I know this might be controversial. I'd be really curious to hear what you all think with this. Like, do you like that? Do you think maybe there's some other ways it's going to work and it's being misinterpreted? But overall, that's the Friday Facts. I know it's super long. This was a really long Friday Facts. I tried to summarize what I could, but, I didn't want to glance over too much here. And overall, super cool. I like it. I do have some questions like I went over before, and I'm sure you guys have some questions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, in the comments below about the whole thing, questions you have, what you think with like what's going to happen in the current stuff used for rockets, and how's the ghost going to work. But overall, I really like it. The space platforms look great. I like the process of grabbing the asteroids, the small ones or the broken up dangerous ones, and processing them. And 2 different tiers of science packs space science packs is really interesting. And I think there's obviously more to this that we haven't seen yet, because they go into like being able to do more advanced recipes with crushers and such. So I'm just going to be really interested the more we see with this. But yeah, overall, I'm super excited. Like, this is like kind of the meat of the expansion. Not entirely, this are the other planets and all that stuff. But this was like the main thing that caught people's eye, I think. So it's really nice to kind of understand more how they work. And I believe that's going to do it for this one. Thank you for hanging in there if you have this long. I really appreciate it. Again, leave your thoughts below. I always enjoy reading all of them. If you enjoyed, a like is also appreciated. And if you're new, welcome. Feel free to subscribe to keep up with all future videos and updates. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.